Hey, what's up everybody? It's Amaya. So today's video is going to be talking all about my single eyeshadows.
Okay, sorry, quick side note, but you see that one palette that I was holding up, the black one that had all those pretty colorful shadows in it? Yeah, well, we're not going to be going over those today because somebody deleted and lost the footage of me talking about them, and then also while I was swatching them, my camera died. So we're not going to be talking about those today. If you guys want to see a separate video where I can talk about those, or in a different video I can include them, I can do that, but today we're just going to be going over the two bigger palettes that have all my neutral shadows in them. Thanks.
So I'm going to be sharing with you all of my single eyeshadows that I have in my magnetic palettes. I have other single shadows such as Colourpop shadows or different kinds of single shadows like the L'Oreal Infallible Pro shadows, different things like that. I'm not going to be sharing those with you guys today because this would be a really long video. I'm talking mostly about shadows like these guys right here. These ones that come like depotted, like Makeup Geek shadows, MAC shadows, things like that. So that's what I'm going to be talking about with you guys today. If you want to see a separate video on my other single eyeshadows that actually have like little compacts with them, I can do that. I figured we would focus on the shadows like this today. Okay, so I'm going to start with this palette right here that I just showed. This is pretty much my favorite essential everyday eyeshadows that I use. So the first shade I have is Peach Smoothie. This is by Makeup Geek. As you can see, I have hit pan on it. This is one of my all-time favorite eyeshadows, especially for blending, especially for transition in the crease. I also really like this one all over my lid when I'm doing a matte smoky eye. I'll mix this with a little bit of a bone shade to make the bone shade not so stark, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous shadow. I love Makeup Geek's formula, and if you're looking for a nice, warm, peachy transition shade, I highly recommend this one. Next, we have another Makeup Geek shadow. This is Creme Brulee. This one is really pretty. It's just a little tiny bit darker than Peach Smoothie. If I look at them together, Creme Brulee, like I said, is just a tiny bit darker and a little bit less peachy. I will typically use it after I use Peach Smoothie. It's a really, really pretty shadow. Again, a great transition shade. Next is another Makeup Geek shadow. This is the shade Bake Sale. I really love this shade so much. I feel like it's very unique. It's a very interesting sort of brown. It just looks really, really great with so many eyeshadow looks. You can use this with warm looks, you can use it with cool looks, you can pretty much use it with any look. Next we have a shade by Karity. This is called Panama Gold. This one is so beautiful. It's a nice, warm, rich gold brown. It's very, very pretty. Panama Gold is the perfect name for it because it's definitely like that nice bronzy, warm brown. I really like Karity's formula. They are super, super cheap eyeshadows and they blend so beautifully. They have a ton of different shades. And yeah, I highly recommend them. Next we have another Karity eyeshadow. This is in the shade Safe Word. It's almost identical to Panama Gold. It's just a little bit darker and a little bit more orange. Again, really, really beautiful with any bronzy, warm eye look that you want to do. I really like it. Next we have another Karity shadow. This is in the shade Enod. I really like this one a lot. I use this on people that are a tiny bit darker than me for a transition shade. Now that I'm looking at it, it's very similar to a Bake Sale. It's just a hint more warm. Again, really pretty with any sort of warm eye look that you are doing. And then the last one for my warm brown row is Purely Naked, and this is by Makeup Geek. This shade is really interesting because it has tiny flecks of shimmer in it. It's definitely not a sparkly eyeshadow, and it's definitely not entirely matte either. It's a very interesting shade, but it just looks so pretty on the eyes. It definitely has a little bit of a dusty pink tone to it, which makes it super flattering and very unique. Okay, moving on to the second row. The first row is kind of all of my transition shades that I will use, and then the next row is kind of my mid-tone deepening shades. This is a birthday suit from Morphe. It's a very, very cool tone grayish brown. I don't use this one a lot because I hardly ever do very, very cool tone looks. It's a little difficult to blend because it is so cool, but it does definitely work if you just give it a little extra love. Next is another Karity shadow. This is in the shade Tart, and I really, really love this one because it is a beautiful dusty mauve. I feel like you don't see eyeshadows like this too terribly often, so that's that's why I really like this one. I especially love this one for me because it complements my green eyes really well. Again, anybody with green eyes, this will flatter you really, really beautifully. Next, we have the shade Bitten by Makeup Geek. This is a really, really stunning shade. It's one of my favorite shadows that I own. It's a very deep, rich berry sort of shade. I love adding this in to my bronzy looks to add a little bit of color, just add a little bit of something to the look, and I think it works so well. I absolutely love it. Next, we have the shade Muzzle, and this is from Karity. It's very similar to Birthday Suit in the way that it is a cool tone brown, just a hint darker and a hint less gray. This one also blends a little bit better. The thing that I really like about this eyeshadow is it doesn't have a ton of pigment, so it's perfect for just that hint of coolness that you need. It doesn't overpower anything, and I dropped it, which is why it looks really beat up. Next, I have the shade Temptress by Karity. This is a really interesting shade because while it is a dark brown, it's definitely a super dusty sort of dark brown, so it's not as harsh and it's not too rich and warm, which I really like. This one's like the perfect in-between when you just need something to help blend out that black, or you want to add a little bit of smokiness but not too much. This is a great shadow. Next, we have the shade Hustler. This is from Karity, and this is a brown shimmer. I would say it's almost more of a satin shade. I think it's really, really unique. I haven't used this one too much. You could definitely use it and have it function as a matte shade if you wanted to, because it doesn't have too much glitter in it or anything like that, but it is a really pretty shade. And then last, on the second row, we have the shade Americano. This is from Makeup Geek. This is one of my all-time favorite dark browns. It's just so beautiful. It definitely has a strong purple undertone, but it is still a brown, which I really like. It's not too warm, it's not too cool, and it just looks so beautiful in the outer corners. Okay, so this next row we have two like black shades, and then the rest of the shades after this are more like white shimmer shades. Okay, first we have Coal from Morphe. This is their version of a black. I don't know if they have a darker color than this now. This was purchased a long time ago, but it's definitely a gray black, which I don't actually mind for certain looks. If I'm doing something like a cool tone smoky eye, so I really like that shadow for that. And then next we have Corrupt by Makeup Geek. This is one of the blackest shadows I have ever used. I'm just going to show you the difference between Coal and Corrupt right here. As you can see, Coal is much more gray. They both definitely serve their purposes, however. Corrupt is just so creamy, it is so black, it's so pigmented, and it also blends really well. It's probably the best black eyeshadow I have ever used, to be totally honest. It just, something about it works so well. It's just the right amount of creaminess and just the right amount of blendability. It just works. Okay, moving on to some shimmers. We have this shade Shrile, I think, from Karity. Not sure how to pronounce it. It's S-H-R-I-L-E. I think it's Shrile. Don't quote me on that. This is just such a beautiful rose gold. I love rose gold shadows. I just think they're so beautiful for every day. They just look really, really beautiful, and this one is no exception. It's definitely a metallic shimmer. It doesn't have any glitter in it or anything, so it makes it really appropriate for every day. You could honestly just wear this all over the lid by itself, and it looks so stunning. Next, we have One Night Stand from Karity. This is a really interesting shadow because it is kind of a satin finish, so again, it does have a little bit of that shimmer in it, but not too much. It looks really, really beautiful with a smoky eye that you just want to brighten up the lid a little bit, or a really nice subtle brow bone highlight. It's a really, really pretty shade. So this shade is one of my favorite cool tone shimmers. This is in the shade Pearl. This is by Morphe. This is from the Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette, her original palette, not the one that just came out, the original one where she took a bunch of Morphe shadows and put them in a palette. I actually depotted this one from that palette because I use it so much. It definitely has a dent in it. I've almost hit pan. Just looks so beautiful with any cool tone eye look that you are doing where you want that nice pop of shimmer. It also looks really beautiful in the inner corners, and you can actually totally use this as a face highlight on someone who is very pale because it doesn't have a lot of glitter in it or anything like that. Next, I have a absolutely stunning shadow. This is Shimma Shimma by Makeup Geek. This is so pretty. Oh my god. It's a beautiful shimmery highlight. Perfect for the brow bone, perfect for the inner corner, perfect for all over the lid for a really bright shimmer. I really like it. It's very creamy, very blendable as well. Next we have Whatevs, and this is actually a shadow from Ulta. It's one of their like Ulta Beauty shadows. I popped it out of its little container to put in here. It's a really, really beautiful yellow toned highlight shade. Absolutely stunning. I really like it. So I have this unnamed gold shade. I totally forget where I got this from. I got it in Ipsy. I will put it on the screen what its name is and where I got it from. I just totally forgot. It's a really, really beautiful gold with some flecks of silver glitter in it. It's really, really pretty. It's definitely a like antique sort of gold shade. Really gorgeous. Next I have Porcelain from Morphe. This is a pure white shade. I like this shade all right. I don't use it a ton because it is a little bit on the chalky side, but if I just need to set my base with something white, if I'm doing a more creative look or anything like that, it's absolutely perfect. Like I said, it's not the creamiest white shade, but it's not horrible either, and it definitely has a good amount of pigment. This is another unnamed gold shade, very similar to the first one. I will try to find out where I got this one. I just don't remember. It doesn't have a name on the back or anything like that, so it's kind of annoying. But it's very similar to the first one. It's kind of like, again, that antique gold shade, very pretty, very reflective. I really like this one a lot. Next I have the shade Moonshine from Karity. This is again a very strong yellow undertone sort of highlight shade. This one is kind of light in pigmentation, which isn't necessarily bad, especially if you want a really subtle brow bone highlight. You can build it up. It's not my favorite, but it definitely has a time and a place and a purpose. And it is a pretty shadow. It's just not one of my favorites. Next we have the shade Patina from Karity. This one is a really, really beautiful pink undertone highlight shade. Beautiful for an inner corner highlight or a brow bone highlight when you want something with a pink undertone as opposed to a yellow undertone. It doesn't really have too much glitter in it or anything, but it is still very reflective and very pretty. And then the last shade in this palette is Daisy Chain. This is also from Karity. This is a satin white bone shade. It definitely doesn't really have a pink undertone or a yellow undertone. It's pretty neutral, I would say, but it is really pretty for a brow bone highlight or an inner corner highlight when you don't want something too blinding or too shimmery. Just really, really beautiful and very natural. So I'm going to go into this palette right here. So the first shade I have is Brulee by MAC. This is a really, really gorgeous creamy bone shade. It is matte, but it's not drying. It's not chunky either. The only thing I don't really like about MAC shadows is the magnets are not strong at all, so I feel like they're gonna pop out all the times when I have them in the palette. They even kind of like slide around, but somehow they stay. Next I have a shadow from Colourpop. This is in the shade Running Late. Very, very similar to Peach Smoothie. It's definitely that warm peachy yellow undertone. Absolutely stunning for a transition shade. I love how these Colourpop shadows blend. I really, really like them. I definitely am looking forward to purchasing more. Next I have Note to Self, which is also by Colourpop. This is a warm orangey shade. It's definitely a lot darker than the first shade, but it is still a really pretty transition shade. I would use this more as a crease shade as opposed to a transition shade, but you could definitely use this on someone who is a little bit darker than me. Absolutely beautiful and blends really well. Next I have Cork by MAC, and this is a really pretty cool tone brown. It definitely has still a little bit of yellowy warmth in it. It's not super, super cool tone like the other shadows that I showed you before that were cool tone browns. It's definitely still more on the neutral side as opposed to completely cool tone. I think this one works really well. Next I have Made to Last, and this is by Colourpop. This is a really pretty pale pink shade. It's definitely on the cool tone side. It has a little bit of that cool tone brown sort of shade to it. It's a really interesting shade, and for some reason I'm always drawn to these. Looks really, really pretty as a transition shade for any sort of pink toned eye you're going to be doing, and it's a really gorgeous matte. Next I have Going Steady, and this is by Colourpop as well. This is a really pretty pinky purpley shade, but it's not too bright. It's still totally wearable for an everyday eye look if you want to do something on the more purpley side. Absolutely beautiful, and again, the Colourpop shadows blend so well. Next I have Swiss Chocolate by MAC. This is such a gorgeous shade. I love shades like this. It's a super red, brown, warm, delicious type of shade. I just think it's so beautiful, and oh, I love it. This is perfect for any sort of warm tone smoky eye you are doing, or any warm tone eye in general. Perfect for bronzy eyes. Love this shade. Okay, moving on to the next row, I have the shade Facet from Colourpop. This is a very interesting shade again because it has that strong purple undertone, which I think is super flattering. I like tones like this, like I said, for my eye color. I think it matches really well. This is beautiful for deepening the outer corner and adding some depth without adding too much darkness, making everything too smoky. It's really, really gorgeous. Next, I have the shade Brown Down from MAC. This is a really pretty cool tone brown. It's not too dark, but it's not too light. It's a really nice in between. Perfect for deepening the outer corners for a cool tone or neutral eye look. And next is the shade Ground Brown. So I have Brown Down and then Ground Brown. And they're actually super, super similar. You could just get one or the other. I didn't realize how similar they were until I actually got them. As you can see, they are very, very similar. This one's just a little bit darker and maybe a little bit warmer. It's still really, really beautiful for deepening the outer corners. Very pretty shade, but you definitely only need one of them. Then next is Let's Do It by Colourpop. This is their black shade. It's definitely not as dark as Corrupt, but it's not as gray as the other Morphe shadow, Coal, I think it was called. It's kind of in between there, which is really beautiful. I think you definitely need different tones of black for different eye looks, so this one is really pretty. Next, I have this shade from Morphe. This is in the shade Iron. I don't know if this is still available or anything. I got it a while ago. But it is a slightly shimmery gray black shade. I don't really ever use this one because I just don't ever find a need for it. Also, the pan size is very big, so it kind of makes it hard to store. Next, I have the shade All That Glitters from MAC. This is such a stunning rose gold. It definitely has a little bit more of a gold yellowy tone as opposed to Shriel like I showed you before. That one is much more coppery rose. This one's definitely more gold. Really stunning shade. Beautiful, beautiful shimmer. Next, I have the shade Snake Eyes from Colourpop, and these are the type of shades that just make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. It is so sparkly, it's so glittery, it's so metallic. It's like a cool tone purpley silver taupe. Oh my god, I love these shades so much. I don't wear them enough. I just love to look at them. They just make me so happy. Next, I have one of the Morphe premium shadows. This is in the shade Vanilla Pudding. This is a gorgeous brow bone highlight. You can also totally use this as a face highlight because these Morphe premium shadows are very, very creamy and very subtle. This isn't super duper pigmented, but it's not too patchy or anything like that either. I would recommend this for all over the lid for a nice natural eye look. The pan size is also bigger, which I don't really like. It makes it hard to store, but again, you do get a pretty big size, and these are fairly cheap. And next, I have Fifi. This is also one of the Morphe premium shadows. This is a really gorgeous dark taupe gray. This looks really, really beautiful all over your eye if you're doing something with purple colors in the crease. Very, very unique, very pretty shade. So that is it for all of my single shadows in my Z palettes that I have for you guys today. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you guys like it. Please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what your favorite single eyeshadow brands are, what your favorite colors are. Always looking for more recommendations, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye.